I've been a financial planner for nearly 20 years, and I've talked to hundreds of people entering or already in retirement. And what I've realized is that there's a lot of bad retirement advice floating around. And unfortunately, a lot of people are being told to follow it. So in this video, I'm bringing on Michael from our planning team, and we're going to share some of the most common pieces of really bad advice that we hear all the time, so that you can avoid any costly mistakes as you walk through retirement. Okay, Michael, thanks so much for joining us on this video. Good to have you back on here. It's been a little while. Lots of bad advice out there, so we have 8 points today to share with our viewers. So point number one of bad advice that we see quite often.
First one I would say is taking CPP early and spending their own money a little bit later. So we tend to hear this quite a bit from a lot of our clients, and not all advisors are created equal, and we don't all want them to be considered bad people, but we do know that advisors like to retain as much of that asset as possible. And obviously they make commissions and get paid more over the long term. So that's one of the reasons, I suppose, that happens. And for the most part, there are some situations where taking CPP early does make sense. Usually with the health or family history, or is there not enough money, right? Do we just not have enough money to cover that gap? So really, other than that, the numbers do show that, deferring Canada pension really does work long-term for the client.
Absolutely. Yeah, we see that a lot. And I did a podcast with Mark Beavis the other day from Beavis Wealth. And, one of the questions he had from his viewers was like, Adam and Parallel Wealth Team, they're really, they really push the RSP meltdown and CPP time, and they just push these things. And I'm like, no, we don't push them. It's like your doctor telling you should probably start walking and moving more. It's like, we know it works for most people, but again, every plan should be built to your specific needs. And it maybe, there's that 1% where it doesn't make sense. And that's where getting a customized plan makes sense. But definitely, the average age in Canada is age 62 when people take their CPP, which is, people are leaving a lot of money on the table. We all want to pay less tax and get more from the government, yet we kind of make opposite decisions sometimes.
Yeah. And I think if anything, Adam, we want to at least push for 65 to be the minimum, at least so there's no penalty, right? So
exactly. Yeah.
Sure.
Bad advice number two, I'll cover off here, which is a lot of people I talk to on a daily basis, their retirement plan looks a little bit like this. It's kind of 2 thumbs up, you're going to be okay. And that's, a lot of times that's what people are getting from the bank or their, investment advisor that's more investment focused, in that, you're going to be fine. You're fine to retire. But really, there's so much to unpack in a decumulation plan and tax planning around it and where your assets should come from. And, for most Canadians and most of our viewers, they're used to having one paycheck and, household maybe 2 paychecks. You hit retirement and you have 6, 8, 10, 12 plus different income streams, and they need to work together. So if your retirement plan is sitting there as 2 thumbs up, you may want to revisit that. Like, that's good. It might say, yeah, you're fine to retire, but how do you do it properly? So again, I would step back. If your advisor says, you're good to go, thumbs up, maybe dig into it a little bit deeper, or maybe, again, hire someone that does it, full time, like a firm like us. There's other firms out there, obviously, that really focus on the decumulation.
And how many times, Adam, have we had clients that have had plans done at other institutions, and then they still come over, right? And they're like, yeah, just had it done, looking for another opinion or a second opinion.
Yeah, or don't trust what they put in there or whatever it is. Yeah, I would say daily we get one of those. So yeah. That's quite often. So yeah. So number 3, Michael.
Sure. So one of the other items is working a few more years. And again, something we see quite often. Many of our clients are told to work longer, when in reality, they don't really have to. So a good plan can really just often lead to a solution as opposed to working more years. And I think what we're seeing a lot in our marketplace, and you've probably been on podcasts and seen this as well, is more people talking around the soft side of retiring, right? So having that, being ready, being emotionally ready. So I think financially, a lot of those people know they're in good shape. It's just emotionally and physically, they're like, oh boy, like, what do I do next? I'm not too sure. Or where, as you talked about, all these buckets, I'm just not sure which bucket to take from first. And so getting all that little nitty gritty. And then that phrase that we hear a lot more now is retiring into something, right? And so when you're so busy working 50 hours a week, they're going, I'm not sure what that is. What is that something when the curtain closes or when I'm done getting my biweekly paycheck? So um,
Yeah.
I think for a lot of them, it's just that part, as opposed to you know they're working because they need the extra money, right, for the one more year.
Yeah. And some people work because they have no idea. Right. We've done a lot of plans. You've done a lot of plans where you get to, tell the client, actually get to retire in, 2 years, not 5 years. I did one just the other day, and we cut 7 years of work off for her. Right.
Yeah, that's
That
amazing.
makes a happy client, but it also saved her 7 years of work that she doesn't need to do, that she didn't want to do. So yeah, it's always good to run a plan when you get closer to retirement. I would say 3 to 5 years, have a bit of runway. Shows you, can you retire earlier, and also if there's adjustments to make to put you in a better position for when you hit retirement, also worthwhile.
No, for sure.
So number 4.
Sure. So the fourth one, playing it safe now so you can spend more later, right? Some will may say robbing Peter to pay Paul is another way. I sometimes will phrase it that way, but we see a lot of retirees having more money than they'll ever need in their life because they didn't spend it early enough. And with our plans and about the laddered spending, we talk about that go and slow go and no go phases in the retirement. So it really does, make sense to have a plan and the ability to adjust that spending as need be. And as we always say, I would rather show in the plan that you're spending more. And if you don't, then at least you're saving it. Or if you want, put it towards your kids or your grandkids or give it to a charity. But at least we're taking the money out of the plan. We're taking it away from your investments. And, we know it's not staying in there, maybe overemphasizing or overstating how much money is actually left at the end. So that's the important part about the planning. And again, just spending a little bit more now as opposed to maybe waiting for that rainy day when it may never happen.
Yeah, and a lot of people I talk to that have been retired for a few years, they're not spending money because they're worried about running out, right? And that, I always say, it's a good fear to have, right?
Mhm.
But there's a way to kind of get over that fear and get a plan in place, and just figure out, what can you spend now? What is that number? And then go spend it freely, knowing that, it's not costing you later in life. But definitely, like, that generation that's 75, 85 plus right now, that's that generation that didn't spend money in the go-go phase. They didn't have go-go years, most of them. And now they're sitting on way more money than they ever thought. And there's large estates being passed down right now. So it's, yeah, trying to avoid that for people that are walking into or early into retirement. Number 5.
Sure. So the fifth one, something that we see quite often, starting a spousal RSP too late or contributing to the spousal RSP later than you need to. So there's attribution rules that are out there, and essentially we need 3 years from the last contribution. So the year you contribute plus two more before you start pulling those funds out and then getting it taxed in the hands of the owner of the RSP, not the spousal RSP, let me clarify, and not the individual who contributed. So we'll say higher income earning spouse versus lower income earning spouse. Um, and it's really important to understand the distinction because a contribution in January, so on January the 1st, means you have to delay that one entire year. So for most of us that contribute to a personal RSP, we'll sometimes wait until January, February, find out how much extra I need to put in. We got that first 60-day receipt. So that's fine if it's your personal plan, but when it's the spousal, you've just added an extra year on by, doing that deposit or contribution in January. The purpose of the spousal RSP is really to have money for that lower income spouse pre 65. So if you work backwards, that means that if we want to have a 3 or 4 year period where we pull it out, that means we need to start pulling out around 61, 62, which means the last contribution might be when we're 60 or 59, or when the owner is 59. So, when you talked a few minutes ago about getting a plan done 5 years before you want to retire, you know what? In certain circumstances, maybe it's even 6 to 7, just for the plan of the spousal, being able to set that up properly in order to take the funds out. So again, great tool, but I think it's being misused quite a bit out there.
Yeah, and just for all the viewers, just a reminder, the attribution rule is 3 years. So current year plus 2 more years. And that's where Michael's saying, like, if you put it in on, December 31st, you only have to wait essentially 2 more years. Whereas if you put it on January 1st, it's 3 more years. So it can be a drastic difference, end of year contribution versus beginning of year contribution.
Correct.
So just keep that in mind as you look for a spousal RRSP, because it can be a great tool, for balancing out the tax bill if you're retiring pre-65, depending on what kind of income sources you have. So, number 6.
Sure. So, a financial planner is only for the wealthy. And I just did a plan yesterday, and the lady said, "Well, I'm sure you do them for people with a lot more money." And it's interesting because, yeah, sure, sometimes that happens, right? But everybody needs that opportunity to have a plan because as you mentioned, we're all paying taxes, and we all have the ability to do what's more, the most efficient during our retirement. And I would say that sometimes on average, for clients that, let's just say, aren't into that top tax bracket, we can actually do more for them, on a percentage basis in terms of saving them tax than maybe those clients that have, lots of money from selling businesses or real estate or whatever the case might be. So where there may be a bit more set in those tax brackets, where we have a harder time maybe maneuvering some of those dollars. So again, as you say, it's not for the wealthy, it's for everybody. And if it's not us, it should be somebody, but please go out there and talk to somebody, because a financial plan will just at least give you that peace of mind.
Yeah. Yeah. And I get asked that a lot when I do the strategy calls of like, I only have, 100,000, 200,000. Like, will you take me on? And they're used to walking into a bank or typical financial investment firm that has a minimum, right? So yeah, you need half a million, million, whatever it is. And I think that's a beautiful thing with fee for service planning. What we do is it doesn't matter if you have $1 or $100 million. Like you said, Michael, everybody needs a plan and should have a plan. And regardless of how much assets you have, a good plan will save you that money many times over. So, and it just gives you the clear direction and the timing on when you can retire, where your money should be drawn from. So, yeah, it's a good point where you don't have to be wealthy to have a financial planner or a financial plan in place for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and I
So,
think, Adam, just to build off that for another second, when it comes to the tax planning, we have so many people that talk about, you know, their tax bracket or their marginal tax bracket, and when you show them, at least going through SNAP, how that changes in retirement, and we can drive their effective tax rate to sometimes half or less than half of what their marginal rate is, it's really mind blowing to mind blowing to them to see the difference.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a big difference sometimes. Number 7, I'll jump in on this one. So, listening to your neighbor or coworker. I know we say it's kind of the blind leading the blind. And you might have a neighbor or coworker that's very smart, that knows how to do this stuff. But I would say 99% of the time, that person might lead you in the wrong direction. And yeah, I mean, we get those horror stories a lot, Michael, because people will go that route and then they come back and, and come to a professional route like us. Um, but yeah, be careful who you get your information from. Be careful who you trust. I think this is going back to point number 1 around CPP. I think the number one reason CPP is at 62 on average is because of point 7 here, listening to other people around you. It's like, well, I took it at 60, 61, 62. I guess I need to take it too. Like we're neighbors, we live in the same community, we must be a lot alike, so I should do what
Mhm.
you did because it looks like you're paying your bills okay. So yeah, as you get closer to retirement, a lot of people do it really bad, and so be very careful who you're getting advice from, and get second, third, fourth counsel on things, especially the bigger decisions that can have large impacts like CPP, old age security, how to draw down your accounts. There's many factors. Maybe you have a pension plan where you have 15 options, right? Don't just take the
Sure.
option that your buddy took at work, because it's going to be different for you. So just something to consider. Number 8, final one.
Sure. So I know it's a little bit on the investment side, maybe not so much on the on our planning side, but trying to time the market, and every conversation that we have um, sort of tends to head into that investment realm a little bit. And even though we're not physically managing the money, but it really does come down to, again, just having that money in the market and giving it the time that it needs, as opposed to trying to time the market. And yes, there's obviously certain times when maybe people shouldn't be in or should be in, but as you talked about, at least if you have a plan, that you're going to need some of that equity component for a long period of time. If we're drawing out your income or your cash flow to 90 or 95, there needs to be an equity component for a really long time. So if you're worried about the 1 year, you you know we're focusing on the wrong things, right? We should be focusing more on the asset allocation model as opposed to which individual stock or mutual fund or ETF am I pursuing or purchasing. Um, and
Yeah.
again, when you're with the asset allocation, pardon me there for just one quick second, but as you get closer to retirement, then you're going to shift that, right? That asset allocation is going to shift. And for some people, it's going to be a major shift. And for others, it's going to be a minor shift. And you've already brought it up. Do you have a defined benefit pension plan? Do you have a mortgage? Is there a business to sell, or is there a rental property? Right. So all of those factors that get weighed in and into the overall plan in your asset allocation.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's times like this, like as we record this, we're kind of going through all the tariff stuff right now. I would say times like this shouldn't change your retirement plan. When you have a plan, you know what your cash flow need is, and you build that cash wedge, i.e., readjust your asset allocation like you talked about. Times like this, we know they're going to happen. It's going to be a different news headline. It's going to be, a different effect on the market. But we're going to continue to see markets like this going forward for the next forever. And so, if you think about a retirement from age, say, 65 to 95, the average person is going to see between 5 and 20 of these times. Like, they're going to happen. So, that's where, trying to time the market is going to fail you miserably. Have a plan, know your cash flow, and then it's time in the market that will really pay off for you long term. Well, Michael, thank you so much. It was good to get you back on here. We'll get you back on again soon. And again, if anyone has questions for Michael or for myself, put those below. Happy to answer those for you. And we'll see you in the next video.
Thanks very much, Adam. Appreciate it.